That's what we like to hear. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been all right, mate. Pretty relaxed, to be honest. Just trying to think back on the week. Yeah, I had coaching Tuesday. Obviously, now on call with you a little bit ahead of time now today. Had a haircut this morning. I think going to my granddad's tomorrow. And yeah, that's how the week's gone, mate. So it's been pretty relaxed. But yours is ahead of an eventful weekend, isn't it? Your birthday weekend, mate.
Yeah, birthday weekend. Birthday next Tuesday, but getting everyone together this weekend. It's been a bit stressful.
I was just about to say that, mate. It's not easy organising parties and trying to get everyone together in one location. But another year older, mate. How are you feeling?
Yeah, a bit scared, but then I'm looking for this new year to hopefully have a fresh start and new beginnings.
Mm. Well, that's a positive way of looking at it, mate. And hopefully it goes that way. And it's one of those where you're like, oh right, another year older and this and that and the other, right? And it can come across as like quite negative as well because we are getting older and is sort of taking away youthful years off us, and our bodies start slowing down in little ways, unfortunately, right? But it is like one of those, right? Actually, I am a little bit older now, but actually, can I turn this year into a positive, or what can I do now? Or I am getting older, but what have I actually missed out on that I really want to get up to before I get to 40 or 50, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, I think, you learn a lot as the years go on. Your life experience, you learn a lot more from, and you
Mm.
take each bit, and it makes you a better person. I mean, I was talking to this about with someone the other day, and I was saying along the lines of, "Look, you know, I've had to mature at my age very quickly because of all the different things that have gone on. And now I've sort of lost my youthhood. I'm trying to recapture a bit that now of that really
Mm.
now, Luca, I suppose.
It's been like a bit of self realization, realistically, because it's like, what have I missed out on? What do I actually want to get up to? And or I've got now maybe the time to do it, or maybe I'm feeling in a mindset that I actually want to do it rather than going, oh yeah, I want to do this at some point, or this will come up, or that really interests me. And you're actually at that point where you go, yeah, I am going to do this now this week, for example.
Yeah, absolutely that. And life is for living. As someone used to say to me, it might be a shit day, but it's not a shit life.
Well, I love that quote, mate, and I think this one definitely take away that, and I'm definitely going to note that down in a moment. But I think it's the way that you approach things as well, and I think this episode will cover a lot of the theme that a lot can happen in a week, and a week can fly by because it's only like, it felt like the other day I was chatting to you, and a week has passed by, and we're here again already, and that's a positive thing because I've actually been really excited to chat to you, and it's been something that I've been looking forward to is catching up with you, especially about how the week has gone and what's happened in football. But I think in terms of the way that we look across the week and what's happened and everything, I think it just shows how much can actually happen in a week and how quick the world can move within that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, though it's exciting to look forward to the future, and they say never look back, but yeah, it's just like it's a racing clock at the moment. There's no time for it to slow down at the moment, is there?
Well, that's what it feels like, mate. I mean, we're halfway through August practically already. It seems like, August is gonna be ending in like a moment. And then we're on to another Premier League season as we get a little bit older. And before we know it, it'll be Christmas time and we'll be looking at 2025 before we know it. But we got 4 months left yet, mate. So let's make sure they're all as positive as can be. And before we get to Christmas and New Year, let's maximize the next 4 months rather than trying to jump to, all right, we're in summer. All right, now we're at Christmas. All right, now we're in winter. Right, now we're at the new year. And just living that sort of repeat lifestyle. And I suppose working in education a little bit, I work, you know, the term time September to July almost realistically, and then when you are working within that, we work within terms, so you're always thinking about right blocks, and then you are looking at Christmas, then you're looking at Easter, then you got the exam period, then you got revision, then you got summer term. And when you've been in that mindset since a kid and then you work in education yourself, right, mate, And then you put a football season on top of that where you're looking at, right, let's look at our season. How does this look? How do we prepare? You're constantly thinking in blocks all the time. So it's as if that time in your life is constantly moving by very quickly because you are living in segmented periods of time where you feel you have to achieve things within those moments rather than, all right, this is actually living 6 months, not looking at, right, this is 6 different months. And then actually going, right, I want to actually do this across a 6-month period rather than going, right, we need to do this in month 1, this in month 2. And I just think you can change the perspective on that a little bit to try and maximize a little bit more out of it, because I feel that time flies by because we live in segments.
That's very true. I didn't think of it like that, and that's a very good way of putting it. So I'll take that away as well.
Interesting, mate. Interesting. But okay, so we're delving into obviously the last week. So last week we spoke about a lot of that was happening in world football, right? So within the last week, the championship was kicked off in their opening games. The European Cup final, Super Cup final, took place last night. We've looked at qualification for Champions Leagues for certain teams that are playing with some big European games tonight taking place. We've had the Olympic under-23s final. We've had the Olympics women's final. We've had the closure of the Olympics. We've had transfer window. We got Premier League kicking off tomorrow. We've had a manager sacking at Preston North End already. And that's just some of the outline of what I've got planned in this discussion for us today, mate. But that's already different sort of 8 sort of events, sort of points that I wanted to raise that have already happened in the last week since we last spoke. But it is a very heavy Spurs themed podcast this week, mate, which you're going to be pleased because there seems to be lots of little things that I've taken away. I'm like, oh, that's Spurs, that relates to Spurs, that's Spurs. So this is mostly for you to be the expert in this week's episode, mate, almost.
No pressure.
No pressure at all, mate, no pressure. But just delving into it, right? So we just reflect back on the Olympic final. So we had Spain versus France in that final. And what a great game it was, to be honest. I watched parts of that game and France went 1-0 up. And then suddenly they were 3-1 down in a very quick succession of a time. So by 30 minutes in, it was like 4 goals had been scored already. And France done very well to make that comeback and make it a 3-3 before France went on to make Spain went on to make it 4 and then 5-3 and pulled away very, very well, good as they did when they went 3-1 up. And just that squad that Spain possessed and the way that they were playing, they were so good as well. Like they were quality, and it's not like they were playing a very average France under-23 side. This under-23 side were very good, and they had seasoned pros in there like Lacazette, like Mateta, who were playing. They had young Michael Olise in that squad, and that sort of talent when you're playing a very good Spain squad just shows the levels of depth that Spain have in their squad and the way they went on to have that quick succession of goals, as you can see on the timeline. 1 goal, 11 minutes, 18, 25, 28, 3-1, automatically like that. And suddenly it was a 3-1 scoreline, and it just shows how good that Spain squad is on top of the squad that we saw in the Euros.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a very exciting future for Spanish football, particularly because having the successful Euros and now a successful Olympics, it's breeding well for national side over there. I mean, with France, like you said last week, and we was discussing with Thierry Henry, sorry, in charge of France. Again, it's very exciting future for them as well. I think it's it's just an exciting time for football all around. We're seeing new, fresh blood coming in now and making their own mark, and hopefully it'll give them a chance to push on now and compete fully for national sides respectively.
Absolutely, mate. I completely agree as well. And on top of that, obviously the Spain women's won the World Cup, and they also went into the Olympics finals as well. So you had the women's who won the World Cup and came to the Olympic final. You had the Spain men's senior team win the Euros. You've had their under-23 males team win the Olympics. So I think across the board, you'd be very pleased as a chief operating officer or whatever, right, to be in charge of Spain at this time and going, actually look at the magnitude of quality we're bringing through. Look at our coaching philosophy. Look how much success we're having from youth to seniors to female, right across every category. We are achieving success that we're seeing right now.
Absolutely, it must be a party district over there at the moment. um, but I think that's it, though. Yeah, it's amazing to see for progress because Spain was towards end of tenure with Del Bosque days, and that it was going decline, wasn't it? Very rapidly. It was quite a concerning time for Spain, but I suppose everyone has their transition periods, and Spain is showing that now that they're coming through with quality.
And I think they've consistently been at that period for since say 2008 to 2024. So that's a 16-year period they've been consistent for. And then you look at the build up before 2008 for them to be successful, right? And you look back at that squad, Fernando Torres, Davia, Xavi, likes of Pedro, Iker Casillas, Carlos Puyol, right? The list goes on and on. And when you sort of have those players in the back of your mind, when you look at the success that they've had, and you look at how they've bridged these players through over the courses of the years, how consistent they've been. Whereas Germany is sort of in the same space where they had a very successful team and they went on to win a World Cup in 2014. But then they've dropped off rapidly in the last 10 years where they're still competing, but they've struggled a lot with, they've had Hansi Flick come in, they've had Julian Nagelsmann come in now, and they've got a very young coaching charge, but they're still not getting to that next level. So they've had a seasoned pro like Hansi Flick. They've gone for them for a younger manager, and they're still not having that success level. Whereas Spain have been very consistent despite going from Vincent Del Bosque into a Luis Enrique, which was sort of that darker period of time, right? Then into appointing a young, an under-23s manager or a youth manager who's very experienced. And their approach has been like, oh, actually, we're going to go for someone who experienced but knows a system and has come in and had success. But either way, there's been that consistency across their youth squads to their senior squads, whereby they're having that continued success and sustainability of that success.
Absolutely, I think we're seeing that. I mean, you mentioned it in last week's podcast, but we're seeing that ilk now of people coming through a youth setup to come and take the reins of a senior team. And maybe that is a new era of international football now that we're uh, up and coming, especially now as Lee Carsley's been appointed as temporary charge of England manager as well, wasn't he?
Well, I actually had that planned in, so I'll bring it up now as you've brought into a discussion there, right, mate? So, obviously, Lee Carsley appointed as interim boss following Gareth Southgate. So it's something that we all expected, right? It was pretty much, set in stone that he was going to take over. And it's one of those where he's come from the system now. I personally am very excited by this appointment because he's done very well with the youth squads. You look at the kind of players we have who are senior players in our England squad. You look at the young players, right? And even then I'm thinking, right, wow, the amount of talent when you condense that squad that we still miss out on, he's going to have a very tough job again to prove himself. But I think it'd be great to see him have that success over the next two games, maybe get appointed then, and then go, draw. Actually, it's going to turn out really positive or really negatively. And following this, right, in 2 years, we go in for someone even bigger, like a Pep Guardiola or someone world class, right? Or we go, actually, this has been successful. We'll keep Lee Carsley for longer. I'm quite positive about it. What's your feeling?
Um, I feel for juries out. It's hard to say. I mean, we was talking about Gareth Southgate coming through last podcast that we did, and that he had that background of coming through for the under 21s, then taking thrones for first team. Lee Carsley, I think it's because, I mean, with Southgate, you associated him to have the manager's job with Middlesbrough, which he had some club experience. With Lee Carsley, he's had quite a good career, playing career, but I've only really noticed him in the under 21 setup. Correct me if I'm wrong. For England, sorry, I've just looked at that picture of Lee Carsley, and it's making me think he looks like Ross Kemp.
He could pass as a lookalike already, mate, to be honest. He does look like him, but he's had quite a limited career when I sort of look on it, right? He's been caretaker at Coventry twice. He was in charge of Brentford for a brief period in 2015. And other than that, he's been caretaker to Birmingham before then being a permanent appointed as under-20s boss and then under-21s, right? So it is very difficult to judge when you've sort of had three caretaker roles and then one very brief period as the Brentford manager, because it's not like he's been in charge of one club for 6 years, then he's gone in for another club for another year, and then 3 years somewhere else. He's had very, very limited amounts of time. So until he's been in charge of the under-21s, right? He was in charge of Coventry for 6 games. He was in charge then the second time round for 5 games, in charge of Brentford for 10, in charge of Birmingham for 3. And that's a very difficult sort of amount of games to judge his past experiences off, right? And, even in charge of England under-20s, he was only in charge for 2 games then. So this is the first time in charge of like a role like that he's had a real good amount of games across 29 games with the under-21s, where he's gone right. I can instill something here. I can actually do it something. But he's only managed 54 games in a 12-year period. So your point there is very, very valid. It is very difficult to go, all right, he's the right appointment for us as a senior team manager because he's only managed 54 games in 12 years. Yes, okay, he's had success. Yes, he's brought young players through. Yes, he knows the England system. Yes, he might have potential, but it is very difficult to go, there's an 80% majority on us going, yeah, we want him as manager, because there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding him, like there was when Southgate was appointed, for example.
Absolutely. I think this is it as well, though, is with what he has achieved with the under-21s league, Carsley, is absolutely fantastic, really. But I think this is even if he was to step up to first team, when that void is needing to be filled for the under-21s setup, you could say it's going to be hard to fill someone of Lee Carsley's ilk for what is brought with the development of them under-21s through to the national team. So it's an interesting time for England, and it'd be interesting to see where it goes, I suppose.
And it just sort of makes me think a little bit there, because in Wales, right, we sort of got a look-alike of Lee Carsley. Well, we had him, right? Rob Page. I don't know if you've ever seen him. He literally looks like Lee Carsley, just
Yeah.
a little bit bulkier, right? But even then, we went from an under-21s manager to a senior team manager, and his time ran out because I don't think he was tactically aware as we needed him to be to take us through, and we didn't qualify for the tournament, and it didn't go down well here in Wales. And a lot of people said he should have been sacked. We should have gone for Steve Cooper at that time, and we didn't go for Steve Cooper, right? But we kept Rob Page. It didn't work out, and he ended up leaving the post earlier this year in June. But before then, he managed Port Vale for 2 years. He managed Northampton Town for a year, and then he was obviously with the under-21s for 2 years as well, right? So at least he had over 100, something like 127 games where we were able to judge him off beforehand. And he managed Port Vale and Northampton Town, not big clubs, didn't really have success there. Win percentages of 38% and 29%, right? That's not a great win success ratio. And then even with the 21s, he only won 33% of games. So that average, it must be something like 34%, something like that, right? Off the top of my head. Now, for a national team to go, yeah, let's get a manager who's only won 34% of games in charge, that doesn't really give you a lot of confidence. Whereas Lee Carsley at least has 8% win record with the under-21s with England. And it is sort of different narratives on, the quality of squads. But at least he's got some sort of positive, exciting factor behind him compared to what we had in Wales with Rob Page. It was very deflating for us.
Yeah, I can see what you were saying there with Rob Page. I think at least you could say it's going back to that with Northampton and Port Vale, but he had I suppose, the experience of managing everyday management, getting to know how to, I suppose, when I say manage players, I know Lee Carsley can because he's doing it with the under-21s, but obviously we're talking about senior pros now, aren't we, going into men's football from youth football? And it's a different game completely. And I suppose when it comes to qualifications and everything like that, maybe it might be they might, how do I put it? Because of their inexperience in from that compared to knockout football, you could say. I mean, I know Lee Carsley's had success with the under-21s, but it's a different level completely if you've got a knockout game against France national team or whatever. It would be. I mean, we've seen that with Gareth Harry set them up against Spain in the Euros final this year. What would these up and coming coaches do? Would they go for it, or would they, because they don't have a tactical experience in bigger games like that? How would they cope with it? I suppose.
And I think then it comes down to, that world-class manager again to manage those players in that situation if Lee isn't up to the job, for example, right? So I put you in charge of the English FA now, right? I say to you, you got this situation in front of you where Lee Carsley's in charge now for at least this interim period. And it's up to you now to decide whether you're going to stick with him past that interim period, or you're going to go all out, maybe try and get Guardiola at the end of his contract at the end of the year, or whether you go for someone else, right? If you're in charge, what are you doing in this situation now?
I think you'd have to analyse just his coaching attributes as well as his management attributes and respect. Uh, but this is it though, Luca. I think I know this is in an ideal world, that cliche saying, but I would like it. I would like to have seen it. I mean, you could tell me if I've lost track of friendlies and that with England and who they would have to face and stuff. But I would like to see Lee Carsley have someone, I suppose, no disrespect, but to a smaller nation. So he got a feel for what it was like against a smaller nation. Then someone that's, you could say, up and coming and getting around for qualification stages and getting into tournaments and then getting a friendly against someone like a France or a Portugal or a Spain even. And then you could assess at all different levels where he feels more comfortable in, if you know what I mean, because then it gives you an idea going into tournaments that's what friendlies are about. You can try new things, you can try different formations, different personnel, and that's what I'd have liked to have seen happen. But again, that's in an ideal world.
It is an ideal world, mate, and unfortunately, it's a little bit unideal for us, right? Because we've got Nation League matches coming up in September and October. Our first game is Ireland, where we play away to Ireland, so that's going to be a tough sort of rivalry game to open up with. We then host Finland. We play Greece. We're then away to Finland, away to Greece, and then we host Ireland at home then in November, right? That's not a bad looking little schedule till the end of the year, to be honest, on paper. But I think there is a little bit of a test there because Finland are not an easy team to walk over, nor are Greece at times. And Ireland is obviously that rivalry game. And
Mm.
if he doesn't get it right, I say in the first two, and then we're sort of assessing him over that third game, we have to be in that position where we need to assess him because if we want to qualify for the Nations League, then it's either right, he's been successful after three and we keep him for the next three, or we're at a risk of not qualifying. What do we do here? And it's that very tough position if you're like CEO or you're in that role to appoint someone that you sort of don't want to be in that position to have that accountability because it is a very tough place to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't envy to that job. It must be a very difficult decision to make. And as you say, they're not straightforward games. I mean, look at that. I mean, before the Euros started, when we lost to Iceland, everyone's thinking, "Oh, God, this isn't looking good going into the Euros." I was actually worried that we was going to be walked over going into that group to start with, after because you'd think after losing to Iceland, it might demoralise her morale somewhat.
Mm.
Um, but as that's it with friendlies. I mean, we have all different ideas. I mean, with the Nations League, it's to make it that extra bit of competitiveness, isn't it? Which in a sense, I can see the idea for it because it's quite a good way instead of having at times pointless friendlies.
Mm.
Um, but then on the other hand, that's what friendlies are for as well because you try out new things. So it's a bit of bittersweet on both ends there, really. And it'd be interesting. Yeah, I think they're on paper. It could be pretty straightforward for Lee Carsley, but then I suppose it'd give us an understanding as well to see where he goes in terms of what squad selections that he wants to go with. Does he embed in some under 21 straight away, or does he give for senior pros to have their rodeo auditions to see what he thinks of them?
There's a lot there to sort of analyze over the next few weeks, I think, and the next couple of games. And I think pressure is obviously on because there's been a very mixed reaction from different comments that I've read. And I don't think, there's a lot of positivity around any manager that we appoint, unless, it would be a Guardiola or even then, Jurgen Klopp, for example, as the most ideal sort of managers at the top of my mind. And as I said to you, right, the candidates for me, right, if I was to shortlist, would be Lee Carsley, he'd obviously be one. Brendan Rodgers, right, very controversial sort of appointment there, right, being Northern Ireland, being from Northern Ireland, right. Thomas Frank, I think, is a great shout, and has national team experience. And they're sort of my three managers if I couldn't get Guardiola in the door, right? Now, I don't want to appoint Eddie Howe. I'm not a fan of his. I just don't have him as someone that I'd rate or someone that I'd pick for the job. But something that I was reading on social media, right, where a lot of fans were quite excited at the prospect, was perhaps potential of Neil Warnock be appointed England manager. What would your reaction to that be, mate?
God blimey. I wouldn't know how to react. It'd be box office, put it that way.
I think it'd
Um,
be interesting because he's quite an old school manager, right? And I quite like what I hear from him in some of the podcasts that I listen to of his, and I think he would bring in that sort of energy of the England side that we need over the next few games. But would he take us back from the work that Gareth Southgate has done to instill in the positivity around England for us sort of going old school and back to the old sort of English sort of, as you say, ilk of managers, your Redknapp, your Warnocks, your Roy Hodgson, for example, your Allardyce. Would it take us backwards or would it be a positive?
I sit on the fence with that because I think it could go either way.
Hmm.
Um, I think quite a lot of people in football all rounds idolise Neil Warnock, and to be fair, he's had a very good management career um, that spanned over so many years, and he has got that experience. Does he have the experience of going into major tournaments? That would be a bit of a concern, maybe. Um, but then it could be a masterclass on the other hand. But I like that suggestion.
It's a very interesting sort of suggestion, mate. And whether anything will ever come from it, we'll see. But when it comes to a nation a bit like us in the same sort of boat right now is the US national team. So also, US national team have been trying to compete for many years. They're trying to bring through some very good young players. I think they've been struggling with managers where they sacked the manager earlier last year, and then he ended up coming back into the role, and he just hasn't performed back in that role, right? And they say a lot of talent has been wasted, and they sort of sit in the same boat as us, a lot of the fans. And when I read a lot of the comments from spectators, right? So they're in a position whether they go, right, do we appoint someone American, do we appoint someone upcoming, or do we try and go for someone experienced, right? So there was someone that was being linked with a role earlier in the week that we previously mentioned in this episode this week. And there's someone else which has come out in the news today from a Spursy background, right? But the first candidate that had come up for the role from CBS was this man here. Potential of being US national national team manager, Thierry Henry. Now, obviously, we just spoke about him being in charge in the 23s, currently in 21's manager, previous experience of actually managing in the US. Seems to have done well with the Olympics. Good shout.
I think that would be a very good appointment, and I think that'd be exciting times for America, actually.
I think
Yeah,
it would attract a lot of people to watch America if Terry Henry was to get that job.
absolutely. I think it could, and it's a new beginning for their football as well, and it will give because of that youth background. He would look into the youth, as you've just mentioned as well. I think that's just a match made, actually.
Hmm. I think so. I think it fits well, but to sort of curveball it from a perspective where you're a Spurs fan, there's a lot of people behind this guy who liked him, and perhaps might swing your motions a little bit. Who has apparently agreed to take over, but nothing confirmed yet. This man
Bloody
here.
hell! That's what I got to say. I didn't expect that.
Pochettino, the next manager of the US national team, according to TNT Sports, but nothing from Sky yet. And he's also been linked with Fabrizio Romano. better choice over Henry, or what's your thoughts?
Wow. I've got no words on that, really. I mean, I think this is it. I really do like Poch as a manager. I appreciate what he did for Spurs. I think he still had a lot to give for Chelsea, personally. Um, but is not. I think there's some good things in there for Poch because he likes again developing younger players and bringing them through and everything like that. But even when he was linked with the England job, I was thinking, is it too soon for him for international management? And with his Argentine connections, would he have gone to England? Would he have gone? Would he go to America? You know. But yeah, that has come as a real surprise there, I have to say, as you could tell.
I was quite surprised when I saw it this morning, right? And I think it's good for the US national team because they've gone out for someone big like a Pochettino, right? And he's not, for me, again, I don't think he's world class because I think he's very difficult to sit in a category of a Klopp, of a Guardiola, of a Tuchel, right? Because he hasn't had the success that they have had. And I think until he does, he just sits in a category just behind them. Still a top tier manager, right? And still ahead of the previous manager they've had. So I think for them to come out and go, right, we're going to go for someone like Pochettino who has Premier League experience, who has potential behind him, who has managed Champions League, is a really good sort of positive appointment for them. And it's rather than them going, right, let's go for another US national manager or someone from the US, right? Like we've done here in England, going for Lee Carsley. And they've gone for someone really positive there and someone who can bring young players through, someone who plays good, exciting football. I'm a little bit torn because I like a lot of what the US has to offer from their squads, and I think they've got a huge future ahead of them, right? And I think he would be the man to sort of be embedded for a long term and would have a lot of potential to bring them through, right? But if he doesn't succeed at the US, I think this could be another shot in the foot for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you
Uh,
look back, right, it is he didn't win with PSG in his first year. He didn't win the Champions League with Spurs. He didn't qualify for Champions League with Chelsea and didn't get them into top four. And then if he doesn't go on and do something with US, then surely people are going, no, actually, he's not as good as we think he is. I think it could be a very difficult position for him to be in now, of a bit of a make or break time.
yes, absolutely. I mean, when they say about having a midlife crisis, I think Poch has got sort of that in a management sense, really, hasn't he?
Mm.
Um, I yeah, I'd like to see him do well. I think this is it. Is if he would have won that Champions League with Spurs. I mean, he made them strange remarks after before for Champions League or final. He said, "If I was to win this, I might as well resign and call it a day there." Like and you thought,
Mm.
well, that's not. You look at Guardiola that wants it year in year out, and then Poch was saying that it was a very strange remark to make. Then
Very, very odd remark, mate. But
it
we'll
is,
see
but
what
if
happens.
I'm going to put a final verdict on it, though I love Poch because of his Spurs connections and everything, don't get me wrong, I'd rather Thierry Henry get that job if it was between them two.
Really?
Yes.
I think that's a great shout, mate. I like Terry Henry. I think he's got a lot to offer. I think he brings a little bit more positive feeling about the job for me than a Pochettino does. But I think I think Henry would go for that job as well, mind if offered it. But if they don't get Henry, I think, as much as I'm not a big Posh fan, I don't think them going for Posh is an awful decision either. But I like what you say there in terms of Henry over Posh. I think a lot of people might find that a controversial view. Again, because Henry sits in that sort of category as Lee Carsley at the moment with that youth experience and what he's done previously at club. But I think there's a lot of potential behind Henry where he's had those learning curves, and now I think he's coming back up a little bit, and it's now time for him to prove himself as well. So we'll see what
I
happens
think
in that
you've
space,
hit
mate.
for now on here there that Henry's on his way up there, and it just seems Poch is on his way down like that.
Mm.
And he don't seem to learn from his mistakes, unfortunately, Poch. And that's probably his downfall.
Now, relating to managers and sort of on the back of that point, which again flows so nicely every time we have a conversation, mate, right? We talked about managers on the way down. We discussed this manager last week a little bit and we connected him to a national team job, right? But he is currently being linked as 4-1 odds by the bookies for this job. Do you think if he went from back down to Preston in the lower leagues, right, that this would be a good move for David Moyes, going from Premier League, from European football to not doing too badly as outsiders like we are at West Ham, to going down to the Championship levels?
It goes back to that what we were saying last week. It's like living in a simulation.
It's true, mate.
I think with David Moyes, don't get me wrong, I think it'd be a very good coup for Preston to get someone of his experience. Not denying that. But for Moyes and his career, is that the right path choice for him? I know he started off with Preston, didn't he, in his management career, I believe. But that's what they say. Never go back. And I do stand by that in football. I mean, we was just saying about Poch a minute ago. If there was that chance of him coming back to Spurs before Ange, I was like, no, I like him. Would I want him back? Because you still hold on to the good times, and that's probably could be what happens with Preston. I can't remember how successful he was with Preston, mind you. But it's a good one for the club, but for the manager itself, it's a seesaw effect, I think.
And I think it's sort of difficult there, right? Because when you look at it, if he does go down and he's sort of got that emotional connection to go back, then he might be going, you know, I want to finish my career off here. Maybe I want to, go back where it started. But if he doesn't have that success, then it's always going to be all right. It taints his original sort of relationship with the fans a little bit and what he done if he doesn't go back and be successful. And I think if he goes from Premier League down and then doesn't get them performing or has them sitting very averagely, then I think he's finished his career there and then. So if I was him in this situation, I'd be going, "Yep, thank you very much for linking me with a job. I might come in and advise you until a proper manager job like the Scottish national team, or maybe another Premier League team comes in for me. But right now, I'm not going to go for this job because I think you've still got good stock level. And I think come, season wise, there might be a club knocking on his door in the Premier League going, we could do with someone like you stabilising us for the next few months." And when you look at the other managers there, right, they've got Alex Neil, Gary Rowett. They're sort of the merry-go-round managers in the Championship. They seem to get a lot of jobs, but Liam Rosner done a very good job at Derby, and they got Paul Heckingbottom, which we've brought up on a podcast before. Now, if Moyes rules himself out, I think Paul Heckingbottom has to be number one shout there for me if I was Preston.
I totally agree on that. I think with Heckingbottom, he's got the experience of getting the blades up. He knows what the Championship is about. Moyes, I think it on paper it ticks all the boxes again because probably Preston don't have a huge budget in the Championship. I'm only gathering that from Football Manager sources. But I think it ticks the boxes in that sense. But as you say, with Championship, really, it is a more difficult league than people realise. What Preston's ambitions are, it's not sure because they've always been flirting just around mid-table every year, it seems, from what I can remember. Would Moyes take them on to that next level, pushing on for playoffs, maybe, and that? Maybe he would, but I just found it really strange that after one game that Ryan Lowe, I don't know whether he was sacked or he walked, that from what I understand, that's yet to be known. Is that correct?
I believe the owner went on Talk Sport the other day and just said we've come to a mutual agreement that he is going to step away from the club. So I think it's more of a sacking on that part, really, but it hasn't gone down as a sacking. I think they both agreed, and I think it's on the back of last season's last 6 results as well as going into now. They've gone, you know what, we've assessed it. It's not looking good, and we're going to make this judgment really early on.
Can I just point on that though? I mean, that's though I see that you could say good to get someone else in pretty early, maybe whether that be Moyes or not. But if that was really that uncertain, why couldn't they have done it during pre-season then to get a fresh input completely? To put fresh ideas in training, fresh ideas on trying things again to see how the squad reacted.
To make your signings and
Yeah, exactly. To give him more time, more flexibility to have his own stamp on the team. Um, I just find it really unusual timing for it, considering they could have done it just last season. Although with Ryan Lowe, there was a lot of talk at one point he was going to be the next up and coming manager because of how well he did with Plymouth, wasn't it?
Mm, absolutely, mate. And just to touch on Plymouth there, as sort of again, the next point that I was just going to touch upon in sort of as we're in a championship theme. Wayne Rooney lost his first match very comfortably of his opening game when it came up last weekend, right? And it was one of those where it's like, will he last up until Christmas? Now they lost 4-0 to Sheffield Wednesday in their opening game. They won 3-0 last night, which I was very surprised at when I looked at the scores against Cheltenham. Okay, Cheltenham are lower, but they've had a good positive result there. So at the moment, he's 1 loss, 1 win, conceded 4, scored 3. So he's got 1 minus goal difference at the moment. It's looking fairly okay at the moment. I think that win last night gives a little bit of confidence back. But I think it is one of those teams where Plymouth, I am going to be watching intently from a scores point of view and
Mm.
results for the next few weeks, just to see how Rooney gets on. Because again, he sort of sits in that same boat as Posh and David Moyes in sort of how this conversation has gone. Is if this doesn't work out for him, I think already at the age of 40 and having like 4 jobs in quick succession shoots himself in the foot a little bit.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it was quite. I mean, I think I was watching was it the Overlap or was it a different podcast? No, it wasn't the Overlap. It was a different podcast. It was with Ben Foster, I believe,
The
and
Foscast,
it was interviewing John Ruddy, I think,
yeah.
and he was saying thing is Rooney's got an amazing football brain, but when you come to a club like Birmingham, Plymouth, they don't all have that technical ability like he does. Like he was
Mm.
pinning passes in training that no one else could be able to see, and you think like that's where it's gone a bit. I think with Rooney, I'm not saying he was a really good player because he's one of the Premiership's greatest players of all time. But really, I think in management, it's again for the club, it might have been good to have got their image out more. But if it goes wrong, like you say, for Rooney for his career, that's one. But also, I'm looking at for Plymouth's sense here. If they have to sack him early, they're going to have to pay out a hefty compensation fee, surely.
Mm.
So again, it's a very tricky time, isn't it, for both Plymouth and Rooney? And you could say, would he be able to cut it maybe in maybe League One? Is Championship too early because it's shown he struggled with Birmingham when he was there, and now with Plymouth with that 4-0. No, it was only first game of the season with Plymouth, 4-0 thumping at Wednesday, and I believe I read a statistic on Twitter saying that they had 30 shots in that game Wednesday, which I mean, for a first game, really, that's quite concerning, isn't it?
Plymouth did struggle. I remember seeing the statistics of that game as well. And when you look at it, Plymouth got dominated. They were dominated, right? And they really struggled. It was like a foot manager sort of simulation when you look at the amount of shots that Sheffield Wednesday had. So I think it's going to be interesting perspective to as sort of people considering, and watching former players become managers, which we touched upon last week, how well he does as well. And same with sort of Thiago Motta sits in the back of my mind because they lost their last preseason friendly and they're going into the Serie A. So I think there's a lot of managers to really judge for this year, which I think is really exciting as well. But someone who's gone in a sort of, I would not say backwards, but a positive sort of sideways step to come back to a club is Ruud van Nistelrooy. So he comes in from PSV, where he was manager and stepped down. He now goes in as assistant manager into United. obviously replacing Steve McLaren, who's left to take charge of Jamaica. Now, this is a man who wants to be a manager like Wayne Rooney, but he's gone, you know what, I've gone from the youth team at PSV for young PSV, right? I've become senior team manager. It hasn't quite worked out for me at the end. So now I've got an opportunity to go back to a big club in the Premier League. I've got an opportunity to learn from Eric Ten Hag, got an opportunity to work with world-class players, and now I can learn from this experience over the next couple of years before maybe going out and going into a manager's role, a bit like Steve McLaren has, really, where he's refound himself and now has got himself a national team management job. Ruud van Nistelrooy sort of in that same position. So do you think Rooney in his next job would have to sort of take a step in to go in as an assistant into someone?
I think that would be of a benefit to him. Absolutely. I think with Van Nistelrooy, I mean, they've still got Sir Alex Ferguson looking about with United involved somehow, and with his experience, you can learn off of him still. You know, I
Absolutely.
think it's huge for Van Nistelrooy, this opportunity, and Rooney. Yeah, I think that's what he needed to start with, is maybe cut his teeth at a coaching level or a second in command. So he got a feel for it, but I think it was a bit too soon for him with management, really.
Mm. And going on to that sort of United front, right? So obviously we had the Community Shield on the weekend, which kicked off at the same time as the Championship game. So there's a lot of speculation around that. But we had City and United. We had an opportunity to see Rashford sort of take that role and miss that open goal. And it's unfortunate. He's been linked with a big move to Saudi Arabia at the moment. Casemiro is being linked with a move out of the club, depending on the next signing that United make and who they could potentially bring in, for example. But they've just made a couple of signings, because even when I looked at this squad on Sunday, right, on Saturday when they played, Mason Mount didn't have a great game, but I was pleased to see him start as a Chelsea fan and an ex-Chelsea player, because I'm still a big fan of his. And you look at the sort of players who are still not getting in and around that England squad, and that includes your likes of Mason Mount, your Danny Welbecks, who are still consistently performing well at Premier League level. You've got your James Ward-Prowse, right, who is very consistent, and yet we still got so much talent. Rashford didn't break into that squad over the summer, right? So Maguire didn't break into that squad. But even here, I'm looking at it going, yeah, do you know what? They're still missing that little bit of quality. Yes, they got Johnny Evans, who's a good centre back and still has quality, still has experience, can still be rotated in. And yet he missed the penalty, which cost the final in the end, but he's a centre back. So I think it's hard to judge them on penalty taking. But there, I'm looking at going, do you know what? They're missing that little bit of quality, but they've made some good signings from Bayern Munich now, I think, on response to that. So I think they're going to be an interesting side to watch United now for the next few weeks and how they build. But we've seen
Yeah.
City go on. They've opened up the Community Shield by winning it on pens. Again, they weren't taking that game a million miles away. But they're off to a positive start with Community Shield behind them, and United sort of on that. All right, is the squad looking ready? They sort of lost again, and there's a little bit of negativity surrounding them, because it's like they're not prepared as they should be, and they've sort of had to lose and gone, do you know what, we actually really need these players.
Yeah, I think this is it with United, though. I mean, it's no disrespect to Harry Maguire and Johnny Evans in their playing careers, because they've had playing careers. But in 2024, you got them as a centre half pairing. That if you want to go and compete for a league title, say, would that get you a league title with them as a pairing if Delit and Martinez was going to be out suspended or injured or whatever? You
Mm,
know, that's my only concern with United. It's with Ten Hag. I mean, the FA Cup and actually in Charity Shield, they look quite well organised. They look quite well drilled. Probably the most well drilled I've seen United in quite a while, actually. It was an interesting take as well that they wanted to extend Ten Hag's stay. Not that I'm saying he should have been sacked or anything like that. But I do feel that um, could was there other managers out there that they could have looked at? Probably not, and that's why they gone to keep with
mm,
Ten Hag. He's obviously done pretty well with United, but then I look at what he's done to what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did at United, and yeah, I mean, yeah, they won the FA Cup, but Solskjaer did pretty well with quite a big top heavy squad with a lot of quality players and let's say egos, if you can call them that, in that squad at the time as well.
Mm. And I think it's again that comparison against Ollie and against all the other previous managers of how much success has there actually been, and look how much turnover, look how many different members of staff, look at how we've changed it. Do we want to go through that again and change the philosophy, change the culture, and reinvest even more money again, or do we keep investing a little bit more, give him a little bit more time? We've got Dan Ashworth coming in now. How does that actually look for United? So, it's an interesting time for them, and I think that I think I'm actually, as a Chelsea fan, right, I'm quite behind the fact that United have decided to keep Ten Hag, and they've got an opportunity to go, right, there's a bit of time, there's some support, right, let's bring in another member of your backroom staff, right, let's bring in another player from Ajax that you want, right, let's bring in some players from Bayern Munich, right, now you've got everything you want, now you've got stability, now you sort of change the squad and add, 2 or 3 years behind you. What can you do this year and next year that is going to be critical, I think. And I think unless he achieves it, then, they look at who's next, and, then you start bounding names around like Unai Emery, who I think is going to be linked with City, and is going to be linked with United at the end of the year, or whenever they're not performing, unless City get there first. I think he could be on a long name of Chelsea names if it doesn't work out for Maresca. So I think, he's the sort of next biggest manager to look at from a Premier League point of view. But over to your rivals in their preseason. A lot of people say that preseason doesn't matter too much. But Arsenal, they beat Lyon 2-0 to win the Emirates Cup in preseason. They've looked pretty tasty in preseason, Arsenal. And I think they're causing a little bit of a threat.
Yeah, I think they are. They're going to want to push further than they did last season. I mean, we talked about it in a podcast, didn't we? But it was a very unusual position as a Spurs fan to see City and Arsenal battling it out for a title and then wanting your, City to beat you, effectively. Never had that before. But I think this is it. I have to say, credit where it's due. Arteta has really organised that Arsenal side very well. Got them playing really good football. Back to the Arsenal way, how you used to associate it with Arsene Wenger days, even. With very good on for counter attack and quick and nimble. He has taken them to that next level. One thing that does slightly, when I say not bother me, but it makes me think with his management styles, it's interesting because you heard about that pickpocket story, didn't you?
Very interested, mate. Very odd sort of tactic, but I think he's so eccentric and so out there. It is an Arteta thing to do, but so obscene. So I think that's going to be interesting to see whether it actually has impact over the course of the year.
Yeah, I mean, what was the idea behind that? To keep looking, wasn't it, or something like that, and to
Yeah,
keep
to keep them
mindful.
looking, to keep them aware, to make sure they're always switched on. But the only thing I sort of took away from that was, right, you've taught the thieves that they know they can rob Premier League footballers, and they're not going to notice.
Yeah, exactly. It's-
And you sort of funded thieves in the process of doing it as well from a big club level. I was like, it's not something that I would have perhaps considered and got through the door.
Yeah, I can imagine. Can you imagine what the boardroom meeting must have been like between if he had to get approval from Fiona of Arsenal and say, "Oh yeah, I'm thinking of going and do this with the lads today. How do you feel about that?" I mean, it would be a very weird thing to put across, wouldn't it?
Mm,
I
very
mean,
weird, mate.
but I mean, like you say, it could be that sort of reverse psychology that it has made them more switched on. But I think that's it. When you heard about some players' phones did get lost and their wallets did get stolen and everything like that, you think, God Almighty, that was a bit of a yeah. I've just never known it in a top flight thing. I don't mean saying this in a bad way, but it's sort of thing you'd expect maybe lower down, not
Mm,
high end, if you know what I mean.
I completely get what you mean, mate, and I think it's a very odd thing. But did you ever see All or Nothing, the Arsenal version?
No.
There was one scene in there, right, and they're out training now, right, and he's got two massive speakers out there
Oh,
prepared.
I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and even that, I'm like, okay, I like that to an extent because you're creating the atmosphere as they're training, you're getting them prepared. But then they went on and lost that match after that sort of tactic, and I'm like, okay, sort of good idea. You introduced it. You don't know till you introduce these sort of things, but again, it didn't play off. So will this play off like that sort of experiment did. So, it's very interesting,
He's
mate.
got a very interesting way of managing and coaching. That is to say, and but I do think that you're right. They could be up there for to be up there for the title again, and I think it's between City and Arsenal for the title again this season. But I just hope I'm not put in that position again of having to support City to
Well,
beat us.
it's a tough time. It's again a tough period for you, mate. But there's a lot of positivity surrounding Mikel Arteta about what Arsenal are doing, how their season is looking, and how it's going to look from there. Now, very considerate of the time that you have available. So I just really want to touch upon some points before we finish up, right, mate? So Spurs, they lost their preseason game to Bayern Munich. A bit of a gutting one for you in terms of how that preseason's looked. Sort of a positive look because of Vincent Kompany and how he's looking for the year ahead and how this Bayern squad are building. So I think, again, they're a team to watch. But a little bit of an interesting time for Spurs and how their preseason has gone, how their season's up and coming. I've watched a few interviews this week with Ange Postecoglou. I've now watched part of the new series which they've released on YouTube, behind the scenes with Spurs, which is very interesting football and insights. And I think that is a great sort of it made me feel very excited, and I'm a Chelsea fan and I shouldn't be feeling that level of excitement, but that was pretty cool sort of to see behind the scenes. But an interesting one there. Another bit of Spursy news is Dominic Solanke signing and confirmed from our last conversation last week to this week for Spurs. I think he is a very good signing for Spurs, very positive, very strong player. He leads on a lot of stats from the video that I sent you yesterday. I think he creates that sort of dynamic up front in terms of Maddison, Sonny, and the other attacking players that he got, and that is that English striker. I'd love to touch upon him as he goes on over the next few weeks and how that looks. And then just to touch upon Real Madrid winning last night on a little bit more of a Spurs level. 27 trophies, the most successful player in the history of Real Madrid when you compare with the likes of Raul, the older players who have been part of Real Madrid for the years, Cristiano Ronaldo, Sergio Ramos, Ike Casillas, as well as more modern names, and yet he's the most successful. But he left Spurs and he has won 27 trophies. Spurs have won the magic massive 0 still, and what a career he has gone on to have. So a bit of a surprising time to be a Spurs fan, but nothing out of the ordinary as per usual.
That's very
A
true.
lot happening in world football, and a good win against Atalanta last night for Real Madrid with goals for Mbappe, assisted by Jude Bellingham, and then another goal there from someone else. Can't remember off the top of my head, which is just gone. But very interesting times, and lots happened within the world of football over the course of the week, mate.
Absolutely. I think two things that I'm going to mention is one with Spurs. I've heard that Ange Postecoglou has today said in his press conference that they've suspended Yves Bissouma for the game against Leicester on Monday,
I've seen that, yeah.
which shows authority. And I'm glad that Ange has decided to do that. It shows that he's got to earn his place back now, Basuma. It makes a stance. And yeah, like you say, a lot has been happening on for world of football. But I mean, we was texting each other about this, wasn't we? And for one question that I'm going to say to you, is Jack Grealish the next Daddy Ali?
That's been pondering in my mind over the last week, mate. I don't think so. I think credibility. I think he could go into a Spurs side quite comfortably. I think he could go back to Aston Villa and do well. I think, if Everton were to perform and said we need someone he could fit in there, Leicester would maybe be a drop below them. But again, he'd fit in. I think he could find a club, and I think he could sit around for the next few years and play really well for that club and be pivotal for him. Or whether West Ham, who have come out and made some big signings, whether they would go, right, we need another English player. Grealish fits the bill. Him and Ward-Prowse, can we get them in? And the Lopetegui. I think he, as long as he wants to, and I think if he goes into a club where he's going to have that game time and gets back up to the standards that he was at Villa, then he can go, "Do you know what? I broke into the England squad. I'm going to push back for that English team now. I want to be back performing consistently. I've had great experiences in Champions League. I've won a Premier League. I've been around world class players, world class manager. What an experience! But now maybe I need to get my career back on track a little bit, and I need to challenge myself because again, he's on that long list of names of players who didn't even make the cut for the England squad. So, in answer to that, no, mate. But we will see what his motivation is like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting season ahead once again, I think.
Absolutely, mate. Well, there's episode 2. So much within there that I've covered, and I've tried to get you out on time for the schedule period that we had in front of us. But we got the Premier League opening tomorrow. Unfortunately, it opens with Man United. They play Fulham. So come on, Fulham, especially as two opposite fans from the London area who shouldn't be ruling on another club, but it is United. PSG kick off tomorrow. We got the Spanish League, which is kicking off tonight. And then we got championship games again tomorrow between Oxford and Coventry. So a good week, night of football tonight and tomorrow, and then we got the weekend of football for the Premier League openers, mate, which is very exciting. So loads to cover, and I look forward to our predictions for the year ahead as well.
Yeah, look forward to it. Can't wait.
Well, nice one, George. Have a good afternoon, and I loved episode 2 again with you.
Top man. Thank you for your time and enjoyed it too. Bring on for next one.
Absolutely, mate. Well, see you later.
See you later, buddy.
But yeah, we try to be that group that can help be there for the players as a 3, because I think you mentioned earlier, you want to have different characters in the changing room. You want to have different personalities. You don't want the same kind of people because you're not going to be able to move forward. If you've got 10 people and they all agree the same things, you're going to get to a point in time where actually you're going to become unstuck. You need that one person to actually be like, nah, I don't agree with that. Or actually, we should try this. And I think that's why the huddle works, is we're all quite different as human beings. And I think you need 3 different people in there, because some players will naturally gravitate towards me and my personality, but equally some might go to the other 2, and that's absolutely fine.